And welcome back. Our first conversation of the morning is with Dr. Fernando Cuellar, who's joining us virtually to discuss what we need to know at this point in time about the COVID situation in our country, and of course, what we believe to be a rash of Omicron infections. That being said, good morning, Dr. Cuellar.
Good morning, guys. Good morning, Belize. Good morning, everybody.
How are you doing?
I am young and good looking as usual.
Nice. Let's jump into the matter at hand here, Doc. We seem to be in the throes of another wave of COVID-19 infections, and many of us believe that what is taking place is an outbreak of the Omicron variant. Is there any particular point of interest that you want us to begin with in terms of being able to fully understand where we are in terms of either the rapid spread of this particular strain or the effect it has been having on our healthcare system?
Yes, I think that's a good jump off point there for us to begin. Of course, we highly suspect, and we have to say that we still highly suspect because we haven't had any confirmation as yet that we have the Omicron in Belize. It's in town. It wasn't invited. We didn't extend a visa to it, but it's here. And the reason why we're highly suspicious of it being here is just what happened the last time with the Delta, no? The increase in numbers. And this time, the increase on the numbers per steroids, per crack. It's skyrocketing the numbers over the past 2 weeks. We've seen a big increase, steady increase. Everybody and say everybody and their granny have it, or everybody and their granny knows somebody will have it, or being affected by it, either in the family, friend, workplace, down the street, up the street. So definitely we are seeing that big increase in numbers, which you've heard terminologies like waves and surges and so forth. But definitely we have it big time on our hands, which goes to the fact that from it busted out of South Africa, that it was classified as highly transmissible, more contagious, more than Delta, and exactly what we saw in the United Kingdom, the States, other countries, we are seeing in Belize over the past 2 weeks, where it's very contagious, no? But if we are to say something, thankfully, it doesn't seem to be too lethal, no? Not seem to cause too severe of illness. We have to be careful how we say it this way, because if we say, cause severe illness and deaths as bad as the Delta, people might feel like, we don't need to worry much about this one, no?
Yeah.
We run that risk. It's a thin line, trying to educate, sensitize people about the virus and telling them the truth that, yes, it's more contagious, but it doesn't seem to be more deadly than the previous one, or it seems to be less deadly. It affects less. It affects more your upper respiratory tract, meaning that they give you stuffy nose and runny nose and sore throat and headache and broke up feeling, more than it getting into your lungs and causing severe breathing problems.
Yeah.
So, but nevertheless, it's going to affect us. It's affecting workplaces.
Definitely.
And what I'm worried about, and we're seeing it, and I've spoken to my colleagues, both in the other private and public sector, it's that it's affecting the healthcare workers big time. I know for a fact, because I touched base with Ms. Chandra last night, and she says about 60 personnel from the coalition is out. So they are also going to close clinics, and the regular services will be interrupted for a while again. And we are seeing that also in the private setting now, where here at Medical, we have about 10 people out already. And all over different companies having their staff being severely affected, no?
Yeah. Let's use that as a jumping point for the shortened quarantine period that we've been hearing about for healthcare workers, essential workers actually. If you are asymptomatic, you feel absolutely nothing, your quarantine period is 7 days, and for the rest of the public, it's 10 days. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that like how we research and we look at what's happening all over the world, that came about because in other countries it was shortened too, no? From the original 10 days to 7 days. From 10 days to 5 days in other parts, but we wanted to be a bit more cautious. So we didn't say only 5 days, we said 7 days. And truthfully, it's a balance between science and practicality. Science is that we know that most of the virus shedding happens in the first 5 days. And the other big part is that we need people to get back to work as early as they can. So we shorten it to 7 days in terms of the healthcare workers and the essential workers, so that we can have our services less interrupted as it could be. But it's because that the viral shedding, especially if you're not symptomatic, is practically zero after 7 days. No, not that it can happen, but it's very, very minimal.
What's your, should people test before they go back if they do that shortened quarantine?
Yeah, I personally, and that's what our recommendation, that you test before that you go back to work and get a negative rapid test, and then it will be even a bit more comfortable for us going back to work. But that would depend on the policy of the workplace, and I think that's what the Ministry of Health could have done more forcibly, that you do one test after the 7 days, so that you're absolutely sure that you could go back to work safely.
Yeah. Let's talk about the transmissibility though. This particular wave is, as we see, about 500 cases a day, and it's just spreading so quickly. What's different about Omicron? I know it has mutations that makes it attach easier to the body, but is it also just a short amount of exposure puts you at risk?
Well, in short story, what happens, Marlene, is that this mutation, these changes affect the spike protein, make it easier to attach, make it more sticky. So if it's more sticky, you need less time of exposure. You don't have to be so far apart. So it has tried to do these changes to survive better. And that is why it makes it more transmissible, more contagious. No? But it all has to do with the mutation that's happened to that spike protein there. That causes it to become the way it is, no? But at the same time, it seemed to have lost its lethality, its fatality, the seriousness. So on one side we get knocked, but thank God the next side that we know as bad as before. And other things I need to mention, thankfully, our diagnostics, meaning that the rapid test is still useful, the PCR is still useful, because that would have been even more trouble if it mutated to a point where we can't test for it, or these tests that we have on the market would be rendered useless, and then we're in trouble. And thankfully now we have better therapeutics. No, we've learned, we've had the IV antivirals, we have the monoclonal antibodies. We've learned, us physicians and nurses and healthcare workers overall have learned to deal with patients better. We even have the oral antiviral now. Here in Belize, which we use for mild to moderate symptoms, no?
Yeah.
And selected patients where we have underlying conditions, so that they can feel better quicker.
Yeah.
Isn't it of some concern that perhaps one can contract either Omicron and Delta simultaneously, as has been mentioned before? That
has been mentioned before, but it's not. I haven't had any data supporting it happening in large numbers. What is also happening in Belize is that we had prepared ourselves for the genome sequencing, so that we know quickly if indeed we have the Omicron. But I'm being told that hopefully by the end of it, we are doing it locally, and each test takes about 2 weeks each. So hopefully by the end of this week, or maybe early next week, we'll have the confirmation of whether or not indeed we have the Omicron in Belize.
Yes, but at the same time too, there still is Delta in the country.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
These guys are not coaches to each other. They never say, I didn't know, so you come out of the scenario altogether, no?
Yeah.
It's still here, and we still expect cases. We still expect severe cases. And overall, we should realize that we are living with this virus, no?
Yeah.
Which translates into a lot of other discussion, whether schools should be opening, whether our country should be opening. We have to live with the virus.
Well,
But we have to be
I
so
wanna get
careful.
into that in just a few, but let's talk about something you mentioned earlier. You said you cautiously say that it's a mild version of the mildest version of COVID-19 that we've seen so far. But what about vulnerable groups? Are people still at risk for severe COVID from Omicron?
Exactly. Yes, that is so true. And we see that. So you have to be careful. While, like I said, you want to be careful for divulge the correct information, but you also have to stress that in patients who are elderly, who have diabetes, hypertension, obesity, autoimmune condition, renal failure, the same list, heart disease, they still run the risk of ending up hospitalized and dying from Omicron. Also, it's not definitely something that's unheard of. It's happening, and just by the sheer numbers that we're having, we expect for say more people hospitalized, and so it's double whammy. We have more hospitalizations, and we have the staff getting less. So we have a mismatch big time over the next week or two.
We're already experiencing that, as you've mentioned. I know that last week the KHMH issued a release as well, indicating that there were several on their staff that were down with COVID. Now, if you look at the KHMH situation, and that's the National Referral Facility, then you could only imagine what the other smaller facilities are going through in terms of their frontline workers being affected.
Yeah. I tried to get that information last night to be prepared for this discussion, but I couldn't get the real numbers of what's happening in the regions. The persons that I spoke to from the Ministry of Health did suggest that they think that they are also the same pattern is happening all over the country.
Yeah.
But in hard numbers, I can't see at this particular point. And it's definitely necessary for me to mention the preventative measures that will always work and work good, which is the face mask wearing properly, the hand washing, and the physical distances. And I would even want to say that we're not going to gather in crowds again and just be a little bit more patient, because a discussion has come up, and I see it coming up more and more about this Omicron perhaps being the beginning of the end of the pandemic, no?
Yeah.
Where because it's so transmissible, a lot of people will catch it, and a lot of people will develop the immunity. So our herd immunity might come sooner than later. And hopefully by mid-year, that kind of thing, that we have correct numbers, along with, of course, the vaccinations and booster. It's important for me to say that we can't talk about being fully vaccinated without saying that we need to have had our booster already. No?
But Dr. Cuellar, Dr. Cuellar, so while yes, the conversation at this point is that this may very well be the beginning of the end of the COVID-19 pandemic, every so often we're hearing of ongoing mutations where new variants are being detected. For instance, we had IHU sometime last week. We don't know what the extent of that will be, but then we're, as recent as yesterday, we're hearing of a Delta Cron now where there's perhaps a combination of the two particular strains.
Yeah, I mean, viruses are continuously mutating, but of course, I think we sometimes not put in variants of concern. No? There's always variants, but the variants of concern that like the Omicron and these things that are causing the bigger numbers.
Yeah.
But the trick, and this is what people need to understand, the trick for that happening less or not happening at all is more people to develop immunity, because the virus will only mutate where there's a virgin field, and we have populations that have no immunity, and you have space to dance and play and change again. But if we could get countries and places all over the world better immunized through either natural illness or through vaccinations, then the chances of the mutation will be less and less. So we all have to play our parts in terms of trying that. Hopefully, in the end of this year, we're not hear about one super one come out, because we don't develop that immunity, which would make the virus less a less favorable place to make the virus mutate.
Yeah, that combination of highly transmissible with Omicron and Delta, That's concerning. But so far, that's only been one report so far. We don't know how far it is.
Right.
Let's go back though to some of the things you said. I read that when it comes to Omicron, you must be very selective about which mask you're using. And in fact, the most common mask we use here in Belize and in other places, the cloth mask, may not be effective. Do you want to dive into that?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That has actually, I think that has been true from the very beginning with the Alpha and the Delta, no?
Mm-hmm.
When comparing cloth mask to the surgical mask or the N95, we've always seen N95 masks and stuff at the line. Of course, the expense has been the problem there. We can't tell everybody to go buy $3, $4, $5 mask where you have to use 2 or 3 a day.
Yeah.
For maintain that. So one class still better than no mask.
Or double it up.
I would have hoped by now we could have, the authorities could have made at least the surgical mask more available at a very, very almost free cost, so that more people could have it instead of the cloth masks.
Yeah. And then the other protection, the vaccination. Belize is just short of 50% of the population vaccinated, but even getting from 48 to 49 took very long. I think Ministry of Health reports now that it's just a trickle of people coming in to get vaccinated. Let's talk about how vaccination, while you can still get Omicron, it still helps with how severe it may be.
Exactly. And remember vaccination now, we talk about the 2 shots plus the booster, okay? As we've seen over the past 2 years, your antibodies tend for less than after about 6 months. You need the juice up again, no? You need the boostering. And indeed, that will protect you. Even if you catch Omicron, it will even make your symptoms less and make it less likely for being hospitalized. And that's another good thing that's happening, that the Omicron has not mutated in a way that he could overcome the immunity that you've achieved through vaccination and boostering. No? So that's a good thing, that it is definitely shown that it's still sensitive to the antibodies, to the lead soldiers that were made to fight the virus. No? So that's a good thing.
Let's double back now to.
But before you go on, and again, this whole thing about going from 48 to 51 to 53, I am one of them who will put my mouth out there and say, I think it's time for mandating vaccination. No?
No,
controversy again.
No.
If we wait for go from 51 to 52 to 53%, take with 10 years. And for the life of me, I can't understand why people realize that it's a matter of unselfishness to get vaccinated.
Well, the thing is, it has always been a controversial issue, because the last time when the government tried to make an effort to get public officers, for instance, vaccinated by a certain time, it created its own set of blowback and what have you. And I think by and large, the push has somewhat kind of waned or dwindled. You're not, well, speaking for myself here, I'm not seeing that much being put forward in terms of trying to get the other 51% vaccinated. Maybe I'm wrong on that, Doc.
I think you're correct, but it's because of the blowback. No, it's because of the fact that people resisted, rebelled. And I think that just rebellion, you can't tell me what to do, because this is my body, this is my temple, and we don't want. But it's for the greater good, it's for the public health good. And nobody is saying how the vaccines, they have their side effects, but we haven't seen any deaths directly linked to the vaccinations. We have seen some blood clots and that kind of thing, but treatable, thankfully. And we are truthful, no? We are truthful. We tell people you get the side effects from this, but compared to getting the COVID and the Delta and so forth, it's worth the risk. It's worth the risk, not only for you, but your fellow countryman and woman, no?
But you see, isn't that? I mean, I'm sure for people who have been against getting vaccines, they now see a variant that comes that you still get with the vaccination. How would you respond to somebody like that who said, well, see, I didn't get it and you got it, and you can still get the same disease?
Well, it's just analyzing the risk, Marlene. I mean, the risk is less getting the sickness, and when you do get it, you have less risk of getting it severely and less risk of death. The numbers are there, not only in Belize, all over the world. So it's not we're not saying absolutes.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not saying absolutes, and that's the thing I need to drive home. But I don't say the guy got vaccine. I see it's saying the talk right there, and then he say when we get the COVID. Yes, but I am telling you, I am pretty much sure that helped for us to recover better when you have the vaccines.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm sure people say that about you, and you have said, like many other vaccinated persons, that a part of the reason you were able to survive is because you feel the protection from the vaccination helped.
Definitely.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the severity once more, because where Omicron affects people differently, people are looking for the symptoms that we knew in 2020 and 2021, but it's changed, right?
Right. It more resembles like a flu-like thing now. So if you wait for lose your sense of taste and smell, that will happen with Omicron. And usually your oxygenation, your breathing difficulty won't be there. It's just you having a bad flu, feel bad, feel very weak. But you have to be careful also when you say these things, because people will take it too lightly.
Yeah.
Okay. Once you have flu-like symptoms, you should be tested. Okay. That's the only way you know the difference between the flu virus or the common cold virus and the Omicron or the COVID virus, no?
Should we assume that flus and colds are COVID at this time? I mean, are we seeing flu cases?
We are seeing flu cases, we are seeing common cold, but we can only be definitive about that after testing.
Yeah.
So we are also to assume at the beginning that it's COVID until proven otherwise.
Okay.
Let's take it like that. Let's say that COVID till you can prove that not COVID.
One of the challenges too is testing too early. We all feel
Yeah.
it. We find out we get exposed, or maybe I just feel something in my throat and I go today and it's nothing. I'm negative, and 3 days from now I feel worse. Let's talk about that incubation time.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because it's happening too frequently. I think that people, I guess there's a heightened sense of maybe even fear and panic that if you start to feel and scratch your throat one day, you could test the same day. I would say give it one good 3 days, 2 to 3 days before your test, so that the chances of it showing positive, it is really that will be high, no? Not do it the next day. And of course, if you're elderly, if you other thing, you could give it 2 days. But one younger person with flu-like symptoms, you could wait that 3 days and test, and then you know. But at the same time,
would it be during that
you
time?
assume that it's that, and you stay home.
I was just about to say, because
I know, because that's the practically we face, no?
Yeah.
It's practical. I see it every day. That I got to need flu. What should I do?
Yeah.
You stay home. You start to assume that COVID yourself, but you don't have test the same day. You are testing at 2 days time, but you're done self-isolate already. And hopefully, and I'm seeing it thankfully, that the employers, the companies are working along with the employees so that they can stay home and do some work from home until they get tested and cleared, no? Or not.
And you know, I mean, even if it's a flu, you shouldn't want to go to work to spread that anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing we need to mention is children, no?
That's what I want to get into, yeah.
That's what I segue into the schools.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, Doc, it's the first day back to school. Are you sending your children back?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
So let's talk about the risks for children. Globally, they're talking about increase in hospitalizations.
Yes. And then the Dr. Shilot out of Kalusha said last week that they're seeing some hospitalizations. The pediatrician had 2 years off, so to speak. So that time for making it work now. And definitely they look after the children.
But what are they seeing?
It's just because of it affecting your upper respiratory tract more, and children have to tend to have smaller tubes and smaller little openings and so in the upper airways, so they tend to get more congested and so. But when they come to develop the pneumonia and the big lung infection, it's not there. So pretty much we're going to see the hospitalization for dehydration, for stuffiness, for the baby or the toddler being more fussy and that kind of thing, no?
Yeah.
Doc,
So,
let me ask you this quickly, Doc.
but sorry, go ahead, Anthony.
Okay, so as a parent and as a medical expert, what informs your decision to send your kids back to school amid what we know is an active wave?
Yeah, well, like I said, the children, and especially now, you could argue that you should be more fearful right now, but we have to work through this, guys. We have to. My biggest counter argument to this is that 2 years now, 2 years in picking out of school, I am fearful that the medium and long-term repercussion, okay, is going to be much greater for themselves individually, for the families, for the country, okay? So I am hoping that we can get them back to school so that they develop all their skills, academic skills, social skills, and all of that earlier than wait yet to another 6 months or another year to make this thing go ahead. And then who knows, maybe in September, something happen again and we have to stop. And so when will we start? I think the long-term effect of having these kids out of school much greater than them being exposed right now. And I said, yes, they will get their sickness, but they shouldn't get too ill or hospitalized. And the doctors are well equipped, except for the staff being down for take care of them. And like I said, they can transmit the virus too. So let's push through, guys. Let's push through. It's risk. Let's take the risk.
Well, let me ask you this, because maybe if we understand more about how it affects children, that would alleviate some of the fears. Because we talk about increase in hospitalizations, but we don't know how severe. Is it come into the hospital, get some IV, and bounce back and go back go back home? Is it severe hospitalization?
Yes, we're not having kids being intubated and ventilated because of the COVID.
They're on oxygen,
like what we saw in adults, for example.
Yeah.
But they will become symptomatic. They will have fevers and become fussy and stop eat and go and cough. So the hospitalization for make sure they get the IV fluids, the IV even maybe antibiotics, because there's always added infections sometimes on top of it.
Yeah.
And take care of them, watch them, observation, control the fever, make sure that they're getting a decongestion, that kind of thing. So, but we're not seeing an increase respiratory failures that require intubation and ventilation for children.
Yeah.
So,
so that helps.
And we should have, and I believe me, I know that somebody will look at me and say, well, maybe I'm one of the privileged ones that I believe because I'm a doctor and he got money, that's why he could talk and he got access. But the authorities should, and I know like the Ministry of Education with the public schools are doing their best. The teachers are heroes all the time. They do the best to take care of their children. And let's continue, no?
Yeah. So that's, I mean, we're talking about the fact that children are also unvaccinated. I know Dr. Bear said last week they're looking at the latest advice to see about vaccinating those under 12. Do you think that would be a good move for us?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I saw the numbers. She sent me the numbers for the above the 12 to the 17. And that about 20,000. I'm sure we could do better than that.
Yeah.
And we hopefully could get the vaccines in for the younger kids and convince the parents them to give their children, because that will be another thing. No, we have it in country. Our problem hasn't been availability of vaccines, it's been the convincing and the working along with people for get their vaccines.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because in other countries we're talking about the issue of equity. In Belize, there's the issue of availability. Well, availability, is not necessarily the issue, but it's a matter of being able to convince people why it is important for them to be vaccinated.
Yeah. I have always said that we hopefully would have done one study by now for really, they have attempted to figure out why people are Belize. It's a worldwide thing, and I think we Belize copy everything, even that we know all the vaccines and so forth. But I somehow still bank on our uniqueness or love in Belize that we could convince each other that it's for the greater good of the country to get vaccinated.
All right, let's go back to kids for a second, because I know parents are watching and still saying, how dare you say take the risk. Let's talk about vulnerable children. I know last week a parent was asking about if their child has asthma, if they're anemic. Let's talk about vulnerabilities, the children that you would advise perhaps should not be interacting at school.
Well, the ones them like the one with the asthma are big time, top of the list, don't you? So you have to give it 1 second, 1/3 thought about those type of children. Those ones who have the underlying already respiratory conditions known to you, no? Anemia, so not really play one bigger role in that, but the ones them with asthma, because then one way are vulnerable for develop one crisis and that kind of thing. So those are the ones who perhaps could wait out one little while more before they send back this week, no?
Okay.
But other than that, I say that must be 10% of the population are children.
Yeah.
Or give it 15, but 80% of the picnic they not have they're otherwise healthy. So working along with that 80%, just on the top of my head would be a good thing, because, like I said, it's been 2 years.
Yeah.
It's been too long that children are out of school. And believe me, we're heading at 10 years, 15 years, when we don't have children, when we have children that have developed less academically and socially and less skills and that kind of thing, and we could trace it back to, remember, 2 years, the formative years, then, when their brains they're sponge now, they soak up all that thing, and it never happened.
Well,
so it's time, and not like you do it recklessly. Everybody do their part. The schools are doing their part. It's not a reckless move, okay? And sometimes we underestimate kids. Kids are the one way where I tell you put on your mask more than the adults.
That is so true. But let me ask if children are returning to a home,
we underestimate our children.
Yeah, if the little ones are going to school, what's your advice for people who are at home who may be high risk?
Well, make sure that they wear their mask. Even if you have a high risk grandmother, grandparent, for example, it's going to be hard, but make them use their mask at home even. Make them wash their hands when they come home, make them change their clothes, maybe take one bath, that kind of thing, for minimize the risk that they would bring home the virus and leave their grandma or grandpa or one of them parents with underlying condition. If one of the parents, for example, have severe illness, the kids, when they get home, make sure they use their mask at home.
Yes.
In those cases.
That's like going back to 20 days where you change your clothes before you.
We could sit down here all day, Marlene, and we could sit down here all day and think about why we can't do it.
Yeah.
And I have 101 reasons why we shouldn't do it. But from the bottom of my heart, with all the love in my heart, it's not, the risk is not that great.
The risk is greater to keep them out.
I'm privileged. I know exactly where the Rwanda is.
Yeah.
Okay? You're never born privilege.
All right, let me get to some questions from our viewers, and some are about vaccinations. The time frame after testing positive to take the booster. How long after testing positive should you wait to get the booster?
2 months.
2 months. All right. And your thoughts on mixing vaccinations?
Well, the best result so far is indeed either boostering with Pfizer, even if you had the AstraZeneca before or the Moderna. It's definitely showing that the antibody stimulation happens if you boost with the Pfizer. So that is set, that is known. So there's no problem with mixing the vaccines.
All right. Do I have to get tested before getting the second shot?
You don't have to, but if you want to be shortened, then you do that, no? If you don't have no symptoms. But I know the argument will say, well, you could have COVID without symptoms. But it's a matter if you feel personally that you want to clear it definitively, then you do your tests. But it's not in the guidelines, scientific guidelines, so to say that you have to get tested before either the boostering or the second shot, no?
Our viewers want to know if there are any detected cases, as far as you know, of flu-rona, where people have COVID and the flu.
Yes, in other parts of the world, yes. They have the coexistence between the flu virus and the Omicron virus already, the flu virus and the coronavirus together in the same patient. In Belize, we don't know of such because we don't do the testing as such, no? But other parts of the world, they do have the two together in one patient.
Okay. And when you look at the situation of boosters, do you anticipate that a fourth booster will be needed?
I anticipate, and this is my personal professional opinion, that we are probably see one fourth, and we are probably see early vaccines against coronavirus. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't.
What is interesting,
but then, just like what happened right now with the flu, we have flu vaccines every year, and I would have said less than 10% of the population take advantage of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's available both in the private and public setting. It's been there for years, and maybe not such a good job is being done about the marketing of it. While a lot of people know that they exist, and the uptake of the flu vaccines even before coronavirus has been there. No?
Yeah.
What is interesting is the fact that there was an article published sometime last week where they're saying that studies that are being undertaken in Israel shows that the fourth shot, which is perhaps your second booster if you look at it that way. So your first and your second would render you vaccinated. Your third is the booster, and then they're saying that a fourth shot works 5 times as effective to be able to kind of ward off your chances of being infected by COVID. They're saying that Israel is at the helm, is one of the countries that are leading in terms of research and studies into coronavirus. It kind of goes with what you're saying, though. I mean, after a while, a fourth shot, and then perhaps annually you'll see people going in to get their vaccines.
Yeah, the virologists, they have their own explanation for that. No, and the reason is that your immune system becomes more sensitized each time. So it sends out a better response after one third and fourth stimulation then, which comes in the form of the booster. Both Israel and Chile, that they brag right now that they don't start their fourth shot to the general population.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about your thoughts on what response should take place. There are people who are clamoring for, I mean, we talked about school, you gave your position there. The border should be open, or is expected to be, land border that is, I'm sorry, should be reopened in February. People are concerned about traveling. What are your thoughts? Should we be tightening measures right now?
I think we should do a better job in telling people to practice the same preventative measures, no? Even if we hear it 50 times for the day, make sure you wear your mask, wash your hands, and distance and not together. When it comes to land border opening, as I said, wait, don't give one definitive answer yet. Make we not bite off more than we could chew then. Make we see how the school opening go, how the dormers look, maybe in a month or 2 times, and not wait for, I think I don't say the 1st of February, make them put it on pause or need longer, okay? And please no, the politicians and the authorities don't come after me and say, make I stick in on the lane, because they will do that. What advantages we have when the land border open, for example, with Chetobal? The Mexicans benefit more than we. Okay?
Yeah.
And cargo and so on, they get stopped for industry, so to speak. Okay? So I can't see anything overwhelming that would force us to hurry and open the borders make we go the next step. Make we see what the school opening look like first. Okay, make we chew on that, digest that properly, got that wrapped up, tap up. Make we give it the wrong tweak where we need for tweak. Then we go to our next step. Okay.
Well, as a matter of fact, Quintana Roo goes into yellow phase starting today, where they're going to have stricter curfews and restriction on size and
I can't say
movement.
for the life of me. And we hear the authorities, they break how the economy, they come back better than expected.
Yeah.
So they're not like within a dire trouble, so to speak, that we have to forcibly open the land borders and give one definitive date by the end of January. We're entirely safe because then we're that poor. What the hotel name that Chetamal? Los Cuocos?
Yeah. It had all its flags up and welcome back.
Advertise again and then they get chingar.
Yeah.
All right, so that's your thought on border reopening. Do you think that we need stricter curfews or just keep on pushing the protocols?
No, we don't need no more curfews. I think we're good where we're right now. We need for just tell the people and for just be careful, workplaces, stay home if you have flu-like symptoms before you go to work. Not penalize your employees as sometimes I see happening, and just use the common sense and not depend on the authorities for make this thing, make we get out of this thing, and take the opportunity to make call out the Ministry of Health, make them get the act together, because they got good spin doctors. They will say, well, everything good, but we're not gonna know DHS, we're not gonna know CEO, blah 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 blah. We're like what? So that time for make the authorities, the government fix that Ministry of Health, and make we feel like we got people in the state, and they are coming and they are going to say, well, you go interview anybody from the ministry, especially the minister here, and say, well, everything fine and done, they decide. But how the hell you got everything fine and done when you don't want CEO and DHS?
Do you
and we
believe,
need to give it some urgency.
do you believe, let me piggyback on that scenario you're bringing up there. Do you believe that perhaps the ministry then is sort of running on autopilot for the past few weeks?
More than 2 weeks, my boy.
Mm-hmm.
More than 2 weeks. And we have to tag, and us in the medical field have to say these things and not make it sound like we're always the cause trouble, man. Okay? But what I see, for example, in my field, we have doctors who are more sensitive to this government, and some are sensitive to the previous government. So there's a divide. There's no collective push, and the BMDA always need a little bit more pushing for highlighting, and it's our duty to want to protect the community at large. So we call out the people and for fix the situation. So we at least got the feeling, the sense that we're not there on autopilot. We got one pilot and one co-pilot and navigator.
A strategist. Yeah.
It's interesting you'll raise that, because at the end of the day, people feel a sense of confidence in leadership. And if there seems to be these vacancies, so to speak, that are yet to be filled in terms of the people who are going to steward or shepherd us forward, then we feel as if though we're chickens without a head.
Of course. But not at time now, that not just rested by the Minister of Health. I think that the whole government should huddle down and say, make we fix this thing, because the biggest thing what happened that Belize right now that the pandemic and the virus. Okay? Sure, we got glaring reports on tourism and agriculture, but on a whole, the Belizean people come first. So the need for get together, cabinet meeting, need for God and say, we need to fix this thing, but yesterday, I will make sure that we present this formidable group front of the Belizean public, so that we go ahead and we provide leadership along with Ministry of Education. We talk about school opening and right now. So
you keep on saying that you don't want to be seen as the lone voice speaking out. What's the hesitation within the medical community, given the fact that
I don't know, Marlene. I don't know. All the news media approached me last week or week before for say something, and I refused one lot of times. I said, "Oh, go ask somebody else. Or go talk to somebody else." As they say hard questions, and if you don't notice that, even only ask me then hard question about the ministry, that me to bring it up because I see it, I feel it, I discuss it.
Yeah.
Okay, and I I know see the politicians there and the ministers there as an regard. Me no afraid for none of them. We are friends. We have been friends before the 28th of November 2020. Okay, but we need to fix things, peoples.
Yeah. There is a
But
panel.
we do have to give credit to people from military like Dr. Larry Espadas, Dr. Minister Musa.
Yeah.
All of them they do Maureen, all of them boy they do hard work in the absence of stewardship.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me bring it back then. What are your thoughts on how Dr. Manzanero was removed as DHS?
Well, my thing in a nutshell is that I graded him and I told him publicly in 2 forums that I graded his work with a C. One, because of different reasons, but the way he was removed was wrong, was not the proper way. Okay? And he himself, if you could sit down and say, listen, my boy, they don't want you there for X, Y, Z, they can't say, and these are the words of the Prime Minister, he was a disaster, they never wanted to work along with them. And I think he came out wanting to be a hero or a martyr or something. Just segue out, man. Just, okay, do like where Michael Pitts we do. Sit down in your office and eat pie and drink 2 Coke every day, and you get your salary and you move out. Give space to make the thing develop. Not make it sound like that.
A bucking of heads?
Then everybody the buck head. Or find your way, listen, you can't give me something for do I want to. You may hear that they give one a lot of offers and work along with that. Okay, so again, let me say, his work there was average whilst he was at the active DHS, but the way it was done, it was removed was either a rookie mistake from the now authorities or blatant political, which I'm not sure. Or they might have, and make we know the information. I don't know if they have information on a man where would have dare make the man say that he was a disaster. Okay, but from where we were sitting, he never did the best because he never allowed, he actually said that he used to go to this oversight committee and give reports. I never made a dinner for issues to give no report to nobody, man. I mean, they lead the charge. I thought this is the pandemic.
Okay, so you've graded his effort as C at best, right? But how do we go from having someone at the helm as a director of health services to bifurcating the roles, and it seems as if though neither of those positions have been filled as yet because we haven't seen anyone being named to those
I mean, it's
offices.
so urgent, not true?
Precisely.
So what that says, that was a blow to move him out of it because he never want to go himself. So you could share blame all around.
Yeah.
So you could say that one, perhaps he should have known when to step aside, and two,
of course,
if this was being treated with such urgency, then we would have already had 2 people to fill those roles.
Of course.
So
there's blame to go all around, but we need to fix it, guys. Enough talk. We need to fix it this week.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to get at.
And again, thanks to the good people working hard on the ground, the people that were vaccinate, the technical people, then they carry the load.
Yeah.
Okay? Then they row the boat. Yeah. Okay? Instead of got a nice big diesel engine in this boat.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a phenomenal staff within the Ministry of Health that's been there for years that have been pushing and working hard. But one of the things you pointed out, I think it hasn't been said enough, that the focus has been on the personality issues rather than the existing void. And we are in the biggest health crisis of all our lifetimes, and we don't have these positions filled.
And that is sickness ministry in the government right now.
What?
That is sickness ministry in the government right now.
All right. Now you're really getting riled up. But I hear you.
Yes,
I hear you.
Because it's not fair to the Belizean people.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. And that's part of what I wanted to get at, because this all feeds back to access to care, access to tests, access to vaccines. That's part of the decision making. Who fuels the science and the data into these decisions? But there is a medical advisory board that includes doctors from the private sector.
Yes, there is.
Some of your colleagues.
And that's what they try to do, advise. But not all the advices are taking. I think only once I saw the last report from the government saying on recommendation and its advisory group when I open the land border again. But before then, cherry pick what they want.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to close off with some information for our viewers because we're running out of time here. But Dr. Cuellar, I hear you always come and you deliver exactly what you feel is happening in the country, and we hear it. I know there's some people who are happy to hear someone else say it, and we hope that the relevant authorities are listening. But bring it back home for us. People who are testing positive with COVID-19 Omicron variant. We know that it may be mild, but it can be severe. What are some of the things they need to be doing at home to take care of themselves? And when should they know when they should go to the hospital or talk to a doctor?
Yeah, we expect that this Omicron virus that we have, the predominant type that we have in country right now, will give us mild by worse, moderate symptom. You should still have your pulse oximeter for be checking your oxygen levels. If you feel extremely weak, if you're not to eat, if you're not to drink, if you're not to vomit, then then a time to go to hospital. But we don't expect one big influx like where happened 6 months ago, 8 months ago with the Delta, where in a 2 days time everybody they crash and everybody they line up the acid tube in their throat. But you need for still be careful, no? Yes. Self-isolate, drink your fluids, take your Benadryl or your decongestant, your Tylenol, check your oxygen levels, and if possible, then you can get the oral medication. It's very expensive, but you need and self-isolate so that you don't contribute to the spread.
All right. Any closing thoughts? While you have a little bit of voice left?
Well, again, the school, I hope that we have a certain percentage of parents that will be fearful. I've had many a discussion with parents, with my clients who are parents, and about 10% that have said that they're extremely fearful that they're not sending them quickly. But the greater good is that for us to send them so that we could have great Belizeans in the future. Okay, when you balance them two, it's a risk I think worth running at this point when it comes to reopening our schools. All
right. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Don't underestimate the children. Okay, don't underestimate the children. They well know that something they want, big thing they want, they need to put on a mask, they need to wash their hands. And as a matter of fact, they might do that even better than the adults.
That's true. That's true. All right, Doc. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
All right. Stay safe. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break, and we'll be back in a few. Stay tuned.